In the ancient time and land of the Bible, over 3,700 years ago, Rebekah, the wife of the patriarch Isaac, was informed by God that she would give birth to twins whose fate would be as diverse as their character. The birth of these twins, Esau and Jacob, and their ensuing destinies would have the most profound impact on future events in the world. Join me as we dissect the history and prophecy of Esau and his descendants, unveiling many of the problems in this world, and bring a new perspective on wars and conflicts, media bias, Zionism, political conspiracies, anti-Semitism, economic problems, and the Jewish issue. This series will also explain why one group of people have made concerted efforts for the establishment of monopolies, hate laws, world government, communism, abortions, usury, and anti-Christian policies. The ancient and pronounced struggle that prevailed between Esau and Jacob still exists today and is causing the world to be turned upside down. The question of who is Esau and Edom undoubtedly involves the most stupendous drama ever enacted in the annals of man. That drama is presented here to help us better understand God's plans for mankind here on earth. Who is Esau and Edom?
As it is written, Jacob have I loved, but Esau have I hated. Romans 9:13.
This is a question which may well prove to be the most important question in understanding the Bible, history, and world events. So who is Esau and Edom? Esau was the firstborn son of Isaac, who was the son of Abraham, with whom God had made a special covenant with. The Bible tells us that Esau would have a destiny unique and separate from that of his twin brother Jacob. The dissimilar and conflicting destinies of these two individuals would affect the course of history to the present day. In revealing the mysteries of Scripture surrounding Esau and Edom, this material deals with history, prophecy, ethnology, providence, symbology, and eschatology. This video traces the life and destiny of Esau and his descendants, the Edomites, and their relationship to Jacob/Israel, to God, to historical and current events, and to other races, plus their place in prophecy and judgment. A main goal of this material is to reveal the plans and ways of God regarding the role of Esau and his descendants in the world. Thus, this video may well provide the definitive answers to some of the world's most perplexing questions. Eschatology gives a presentation of ideas regarding the ultimate condition of the world and of man as is represented in Scripture. Broadly, it includes also ideas regarding events leading to the end of days as we know it.
The legacy of Esau and Edom.
To help answer the question of who is Esau and Edom, the first necessary step is to examine the racial and genealogical history of Esau and his descendants.
The life and history of Esau.
Esau was the firstborn son of Isaac, and thus was heir to the birthright derived from the direct racial lineage of Adam to Noah to Abraham. Thus, Esau was racially an Edomite, a Semite, and a Hebrew, the racial stock of the white race.
Esau despised his birthright when he sold it to Jacob.
Esau married the daughters of Canaan, or Canaanites, the daughters of Heth, or Hittites, the daughters of Ishmael, the daughters of the Hivites, and had intermarried with the Horites.
These interracial marriages were a grief of mind to Isaac and Rebekah, Esau's parents.
The descendants of Esau from these marriages became known as Edomites, or as Edom. The Edomites also possessed some Israelite blood by intermarriages, as in the case of Solomon. Esau and the Edomites dwelt in Mount Seir, which God gave to Esau for a possession. This land was also known as Idumea. The land of Edom, Mount Seir, lied south of the Dead Sea, stretching south to its seaport at Elat, and included the ravine known as Petra. Here is a map showing the extent of the kingdom of Israel at the time of David's death around 1000 BC, and the location of the land of Edom, which David had conquered. After the conquest of Judah by the Babylonians, some of the Edomites who had mixed with the Jews in their land resettled with them in Judea. 2 centuries later, all of Edom was driven out of Mount Seir. The Edomites were driven from Petra westward by the Nabateans in 312 BC, and before the middle of the 2nd century BC, they were occupying not only southern Judah, but also Hebron and the country to its north as far as Bethsur. The Nabateans now occupied Mount Seir, and the Edomites were driven into the old territory of Judah. The Maccabean family, a remnant of the true Judahites, had ruled Judea from 166 to 37 BC, and under Judas Maccabee, recaptured the city of Hebron from the Edomites in 164 BC, during the time of John Hyrcanus, 135 to 105 BC. He was the nephew of Judas. The Judahites were again faced with the hostility of the Idumeans. Hyrcanus confronted the Edomites, causing a decisive change in the relations between the two factions. John Hyrcanus conquered the whole of Edom and undertook the forced conversion of its inhabitants to Judaism. Thenceforth, the Edomites became a section of the Jewish people. Thus, at this juncture of time, the Edomites were then incorporated with the Jewish nation, and their country was called by the Greeks and Romans Idumea. But the tide turned in favor of the Edomite faction when Julius Caesar made Antipater an Edomite procurator of Judea in 47 BC. A procurator was a powerful regional governor appointed by the Romans, overseeing military, economic, and political affairs in Judea, much like a modern-day regional governor, with significant administrative, financial, and military responsibilities. When Antipater was killed 4 years later, his son, Herod, gained power but was rejected by the Judahites. Herod shrewdly gained the support of Rome. With a Roman army at his heels, he returned to Palestine, and after a 6-month siege, he captured Jerusalem and became the king of Judea in 37 BC. Herod was a shrewd and unethical tyrant and was despised by the Judahites because he was an Idumean and not one of their own stock. Herod hated the people of Judah, and one of his first acts was to execute 45 of the leaders of the old aristocracy to eliminate any rivalry for leadership. Having secured the kingship, Herod next destroyed the priestly line of Hyrcanus, the last being Antigonus, who taunted Herod with his Idumean origin and asserted that the kingdom should fall on one of the royal family. Finally, he murdered Aristobulus, the last of the Aaronic high priest. Herod then sought to affiliate himself with the high priesthood through marrying Mariamne, Aristobulus' sister and the daughter of a high priest. Herod even rebuilt the temple, as it was in ruins from repeated sieges, part of which Herod was responsible for by his attack upon the city. The temple of God became, in a sense, Herod's temple. We thus find that in the years just before the time of Christ, Judea was controlled by an Edomite faction who usurped the Judahite name, land, and heritage. Under Hyrcanus, the Edomites were forced to be part of Judean culture, but under Herod, the Herodian faction had control over the Judeans' culture and way of life. Confounding the matter is the fact that some Judahites had intermixed with the Edomite, Canaanite, and other alien stock at the time they returned from the Babylonian captivity. These mixed blood people were also hostile toward the Judean Israelites. The land was not the kingdom of Judah, but the nation of the Jews, Judeans. Historically, the Edomites became known as Jews, a term derived from Judea, which was derived from the name Judah, being the royal line of Israel, though they were never of Judah or Israel. During Titus's siege of Jerusalem from 66 through 70 AD, 20,000 Idumeans appeared before Jerusalem to fight on behalf of the Zealots who were besieged in the temple. About 97,000 inhabitants of Judea were taken captive, and an unknown number had fled either before or during the siege. This is the last mention of the Edomites as a people in history. Yet Bible prophecy indicates that Edom would be an enemy of Israel in latter times. We find that their only connection to a present-day people and religion is with the Jews in Judaism. We thus need to trace back the origin of the Jews to see who they are and how they fit into the puzzle of who is Esau, Edom.
The origins of the Jews.
The Jews of today fall within two main types: the Sephardic Jew and the Ashkenazi Jew. The Sephardim are also known as Spanish Jews and constitute about 5% of the Jews in the world. The Ashkenazim, or the Eastern European Jews, which were found in Poland, Russia, Germany, and Western Asia. This group of Jews makes up 90% of the so-called Jews in the world. Many reference and historical sources have unequivocally identified that the bulk of the Ashkenazi Jews were derived from a people known as Khazars. The original Jewish encyclopedia of 1905 revealed that the main stock of the Jews came from the Asiatic people known as Khazars. They are a people of Turkish origin whose life and history are interwoven with the very beginnings of the history of the Jews of Russia. Historical evidence points to the region of the Urals as the home of the Khazars, according to the Jewish Encyclopedia. The Khazars were a nomadic people who had no traces of Hebraic culture. They had been following a pagan and sex-oriented religion until they had officially embraced Judaism in 740 AD while rejecting Christianity and Mohammedanism. The Jewish author and historian Arthur Koestler also concludes that the majority of Eastern European Jews, and hence of world Jewry, is of Khazar and not of Semitic origin. In the beginning of his book, he states, "The large majority of surviving Jews in the world is of Eastern European, and thus perhaps mainly of Khazar origin. If so, this would mean that their ancestors came not from the Jordan, but from the Volga, not from Canaan, but from the Caucasus, and that genetically they are more closely related to the Hun, Uyghur, and Magyar tribes than to the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." Koestler then devotes the remainder of his 255-page book to prove this premise. For instance, a record of a letter by a Khazar king shows that he traced his people to Noah's son, Japheth, not Shem, and to Japheth's grandson Togarma, the ancestor of all Turkish tribes. The Khazar government was destroyed by the Slavs of Russia in 1016 AD. Around 1200 AD, the land was invaded by the hordes of Genghis Khan. These two events caused large numbers of Khazars to migrate to Poland and Western Russia, forming the cradle of Western Jewry. There's an abundance of ancient place names in the Ukraine and Poland, which derive from Khazar or Zid, Jew in Russian. As the Khazars left their homeland of Khazaria and migrated north and west, they lost their name and became known as Jews. Their Yiddish language and alphabet is not that of the Israelites, Phoenician Greek style, but an amalgamation of Aramaic, medieval German, Slavic, and Russian dialects. The best historical evidence, therefore, shows that the Jews are not descended directly from the Israelites of the Bible, but derive much of their ancestry from the Khazars and other people of Turkish Asiatic blood. The Khazars are also of Edomite stock, and both stocks make up the present-day Jews, as the historian H.G. Wells states. The Idumeans, Edomites, were made Jews, and a Turkish people, Khazars, were mainly Jews in South Russia. The main part of Jewry never was in Judea and had never come out of Judea. According to the Jewish Encyclopedia, the original stock of the Khazars came from the land of Edom. Hasdai Ibn Shaprut, who was foreign minister to Abd al-Rahman, Sultan of Cordova, in his letter to King Joseph of the Khazars, about 960 AD, speaks of the tradition according to which the Khazars once dwelt near the Seir Mountains. The Seir Mountains are none other than the original land of Esau, Edom. Thus dwelt Esau in Mount Seir. Esau is Edom. Genesis 36, verse 8. Seir was a mountain range south of the Dead Sea and was also known as the land of Edom. Genesis 36, verse 21. The Seir Mountains were the home of the Edomites for nearly a millennium. Thus, it should be no surprise that the migrants from that land would recall the name of their original homeland. If the Khazars did originally dwell near the Seir Mountains, then the Khazars, and thus world Jewry, are racially of Edomite stock. But how and when did Edomites get to Khazaria? There is evidence that in the 6th century BC, some of the Edomites fled their homeland of Seir and migrated north. After the fall of Jerusalem in 586 BC, the Edomites began to press northward, according to Ezekiel 36, verse 5. The extent and ultimate destination of this northward trek is not found in history, but it is likely that it brought some Edomites to the region of Khazaria. The Edomites were also cast out of Palestine and dispersed in different directions in 70 AD when the Romans sacked Jerusalem. Many thousands of these people are known to have migrated northward to Asia Minor and around the Black Sea region. When dealing with a people of a mixed racial heritage, it becomes a real quandary to ascertain their origin. The Jews of today are such a people. In fact, the Jews themselves assert they are mongrels because of the original mixed ancestry of the Jews and their subsequent history of intermixture with every people among who they have lived and continue to live. The anthropologist, Professor Carlton Kuhn, also has demonstrated the admixture of the different Jewish types with other races. He explains that while the Jews cannot be classed as a race per se, they are an ethnic group. The Jews form an ethnic group that, like all ethnic groups, they have their own racial elements distributed in their own proportions. Like all or most ethnic groups, they have their look, a part of their cultural heritage that both preserves and expresses their cultural solidarity. They have developed a special racial subtype and a special pattern of facial and bodily expression. When we talk of the racial mixtures that brought about the Jews of today, we must highlight the events surrounding the Babylonian captivity of Judah. The remainder of the Judah nation, which included some of the tribes of Benjamin, Levi, and Simeon, was taken captive by Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. But at the same time, Edom was also put under Babylonian rule, causing some of the Edomites to be brought to Babylon. When Persia overthrew Babylon, King Cyrus issued a decree in 538 BC, allowing the Judahites to return to their land and rebuild the temple. However, only about 50,000 returned to Palestine, according to Ezra chapter 2, verses 64 and 65. Some of them had apparently departed to their kinsmen in Europe. However, many of the Judahites and Benjamites preferred to remain in Babylonia, becoming a part of the indigenous population. Those remaining had intermarried with the Babylonians and Edomites that were in the land and adopted their religion and law, the Babylonian Talmud, which became the foundation for Judaism. These then became the Babylonian Jews. Then many of the people of the land became Jews, according to Esther chapter 8 verse 17. Although they are called Jews, a term which is derived from the word Judah, these people are not true Judahites, but became a mixed or hybridized people consisting of Edomites, Hittites, Canaanites, Judahites, Babylonians, Ishmaelites, Huns, and Khazars. When they migrated to other lands throughout the centuries, they retained their Jew or Judahite identity, but brought with them the religion of Babylon. The Jews bear the features of the races Esau intermixed with. Because of the Jews' mixed ancestry, history is sketchy as to their origins from Japheth, Esau, or other people in the Bible. However, identification of these persons or tribes can also be ascertained by the characteristics, prophecies, etc. revealed about them in the Bible. Since Esau and Edom is one of the more predominant figures in the Bible, we will endeavor to ascertain his identification and place in historical and current events by these means. Join me as we delve into this and more in part 2 of Who is Esau and Edom?